three of the core elements to Iowa's nutrient reduction strategy. First is that our practices are built on science. We have a scientific basis that says the research shows that when you implement this practice, you get this result. That allows us to go out and work and implement those practices and know that we will have a positive outcome. Two is that whether you live in the urban landscape or the rural landscape, there's something that you can do to improve water quality. We can't point our fingers at our friends in the urban areas and say it's all your fault, it's all golf courses' fault, or it's the urban folks point at the rural folks and farmers and saying it's all your fault. No, we can't do that anymore. So that's why you see us working on both the urban and the rural landscape, and it's important that we do that. And the final piece is this idea that we work on a voluntary conservation standpoint. Again, culture of conservation versus culture of regulation. Make no mistake, if we do not advance, if we do not prove that we can use this strategy and this approach and these practices that we are pursuing here in the state of Iowa, or being a leader on that, by the way, but if we can't prove the success of that model and that approach, freedom to operate will be an issue long term. You can be sure that folks in Washington, D.C. and even in Des Moines will be looking at ways to regulate and tell you all, and tell our farmers and our landowners how to manage their farms. That's something that we're very keenly aware of, and again, trying to show that there's a much better alternative. Implementing practices that make sense on your farms across the state, and recognizes the diversity of our operations and our land from east to west and north to south.
You know, the idea that this is not a place that we're here to assign blame or finger point and figure out, you know, who's causing the problem. It's, you know, let's find what are the systems and practices that work well today on our commercial and industrial agricultural system, and what kind of tools and technologies are available that can, you know, help our country's farmers put those into practice.
With your knowledge on soil health, your knowledge on chemicals, the farmer's knowledge, that we've come together with some good conservation practices and improve yield, improve health of our soil and our water. Because it's a huge issue. You can't help but open up a magazine and see it. So you guys have probably already seen it several times. This is the 4R system. So it's the right source, the right time, the right rate, right place. Perfect sense. Then you add the plus. And the plus adds the conservation practices. Who is better in this room, besides maybe a contractor, or maybe if you're with NRCS, who is better and works with the farmer more directly about his inputs on that particular piece of ground than the people sitting right here? So you're already telling them about fertilizer chemical programs. You know everything about it. You educate yourself about it. I know in the last 2 years that I've been here, you're talking more about cover crops, but can we help make that bridge and start identifying with your customer, which is, if it's your farmers, can we start making that connection? Hey, do we have a piece of soil, a piece of land that every year that I'm doing yield maps for you, every year that we're grid sampling, this ground is, you just tell it's not working out. Let's figure out something to do with that. This was about 5 years ago. I started listing in my farm operation all the things that I do. All the things that I do, and I would encourage this to be another conversation with your partners, with your farmers, to start making that list so that when there's a time when maybe people are going to ask for that list, that you have it down. And maybe, I even thought of this, maybe it's such a thing as your fertilizer and chemical cooperator, maybe you help map those structures. I mean, it's pretty easy to do. You guys got the technology. You know, if you have a FSA map, that shows buffer strips and everything, but you could actually make a really cool map for a farmer and say, hey, this is where your saturated buffer is. This is where your terraces are. This is where your prep wetland, you know, label the structures and put value into it, and maybe have that included into some type of portfolio the farmer can keep.
So saturated buffers, if we ever go on a site visit for somebody that's interested in one of these tile treatment options, usually saturated buffers are the first option we like to consider. They are a little bit more site specific than the bioreactor, which is more of a generalist type practice. Like I said, bioreactors can fit just about anywhere. With saturated buffers, we do need to have at least 30 feet of perennial vegetation to work with, and that's for federal funding of the practice or state funding. If you're doing it yourself, you can probably get by with 15 feet if you really wanted to. IDALS has done a great job of funding these practices and really trying to get them off the ground. I think you heard Secretary Naig mention this morning that I think they're going to make an even bigger investment in these edge of field structural practices moving forward with some additional funding from the water quality bill that got passed last year. And so the time is right, I guess, for people that are interested in putting these in. You can probably get about 100% of these practices paid for. Pork producers do have a pot of money available that they let IDALS manage, but if you're a pork producer that's interested in one of these practices, there's some funding available. If you go to IDALS and ask and request it, that would make the producer whole for putting this practice in, so it would come at no cost. You can match up state and federal funding programs. Additional government programs, there's a few more hoops to jump through to make sure everything's correct, so it might take a little bit longer to get the practice in the ground, but that's an avenue that you can take to get to 100% cost share.
What I'm going to attempt to do is a very quick, give you some guidance, quick guidance. I can't go into detail because I would be here all day and all day tomorrow too. But on what to look for when you're with your clients in the field, quick, and what NRCS can do for you in our field offices, area offices, maybe even up to the state office, to assist your clients to understand what they need, what their resource concerns are, what conservation practices may be useful to them, and what the process is.
When we sent this out back in September or October, we had 500 courses since that time taken. We think there's a lot more opportunities. We've gotten good reviews on those courses. They're straightforward, they're short, 5 to 12 minutes, and provide good information about the practices. Not recommendations, just more information about those practices. So I encourage you to take a look at that. Again, there's a sheet in the back that looks like this with the instructions of how to get there. And you can log on and start taking those courses.
Culture of conservation means we have to get to a point where this is no longer socially acceptable, right? Am I wrong about that? You guys see these fields all the time. I see stuff all the time, probably that my clients don't see. We have the luxury of, being ag professionals in probably the single greatest place to grow corn on the face of the earth, right? We're out there, at least I hope we are, all the time driving around, looking at fields, what's on the edge of a field, what's soil loss look like. You guys have different eyes for this than what your clients will. So make it a priority, measure it, and fix it. But back to measuring things. What do we track? If yield is all we care about, we won't solve the problem. Track overall nitrogen rates. Get a sense for what you're recommending, how much people are applying, who's over-applying, who's frankly wasting money. Get a sense of nitrogen usage. This figure down there. If y'all remember, when I was a teenager, I remember it used to be 1.2 pounds of N per bushel, right? You hear a lot of people bragging about how they're 0.8, 0.6, whatever. We talk about yield, but do we talk about that as a ranking factor or a benchmarking factor for our clients? That's an easy calculation to do. But if we don't do it, it's just like soil loss. We won't have any context for comparing or understanding the difference between different farm operations, and our performance over time as CCAs.
So you get a lot of social pressure, but you got a lot of mind pressure also of as you're changing your conservation plan, you need people who can help mentor you, take you through those times when you're like, oh, am I doing the right thing? And